Hello? Pull up a chair. My name is Earl McKenna, and the sea has given me more stories than fish. Before we tell today's tale, if you enjoy good prose that smells of salt, I ask for that little bit of help. Click the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any adventure. The sea doesn't keep secrets. It just hides them in plain sight, waiting for a fool curious enough to look. Most folks think the ocean's danger is in its storm, the rogue waves that come out of the blackness like a freight train, or the ice that builds up on the rigging until a boat just gives up and turns turtle. And they ain't wrong. But the real danger, the kind that settles into your bones and never leaves, is the size of, not just the width, the depth. We spend our lives scraping the skin of it, pulling up crab and cod, thinking we understand it. We don't. We're just flies buzzing on the surface of something ancient. I learned this lesson proper back in '88, I think. I was running the Sea Dog up in the Bering Sea, chasing king crab. It was late season, pushing my luck, I know. The ice was starting to creep south, and most of the fleet had already headed back to Dutch Harbor, their holds full and their nerves frayed. But I was behind that year. A bad engine coil in August had cost me 2 good weeks, and I was trying to make up the difference. That's always when the sea decides to teach you something, when you're greedy or desperate. I was a bit of both. The weather had been strange for 3 days, not stormy, but muffled. The fog was thick as cold clam chowder, a wet, heavy blanket that swallowed the sound of my diesel engine just 50 feet from the bow. The water was unnaturally calm, like a sheet of dark glass, disturbed only the geometric ripple a boat cut through it. When the sea is loud, you know what it's thinking. When it's silent like this, it's planning something. I was out near the edge of the shelf, a place the old alert fisherman called the threshold, though I never knew why. The charts said it was deep water, miles deep, dropping off into nothing. But the fishing was sometimes good. I was alone, just me and the thrum of the engine and the constant dripping cold. You get used to the solitude, but in fog like that, the solitude starts to get used to you. It feels heavy. It presses in. I remember wiping the condensation off the wheelhouse window and squinting into the gray. I had this feeling, the kind that starts in the pit of your stomach, that I was being watched. I shook it off. It's the fog, I told myself. The cold, lack of sleep. It plays tricks on a man's mind. I was hauling my first pot of the morning. The hydraulic winch groaned under the strain. I expected that good, heavy feeling of a full trap, the satisfying weight of money coming up from the deep. But this was different. This was heavy. I mean, impossibly heavy. The winch motor screamed in a high-pitched whine, and the Sea Dog listed hard to starboard, the rail nearly dipping into the water. "What in blazes?" I muttered, easing off the hydraulic lever. I gave it another pull, gently this time. The wire rope was taut as a guitar string, humming in the damp air, and then it pulled back. I ain't talking about a snag on the bottom. I've hit rocks, I've hit wrecks, I've even snagged what I think was a lost Soviet submarine anchor once. This was not that. This slow, massive, living pull. It wasn't a jerk. It was a draw. The boat lurched, and I was thrown against the bulkhead. The line wasn't just heavy. Something was holding it. My heart hammered against my ribs. I did the only thing I could. I hit the emergency release. The cable snapped free from the drum with a sound like a cannon shot, and the Sea Dog rocked back violently, the deck slippery with spray. I stood there, breathing hard, staring at the spot where my line had vanished. Whatever was down there, it could keep the damned pot. I needed to get my bearing. The fog was disorienting. The pull dragged me off my mark. I went back into the wheelhouse, my hand shaking just a bit, and checked the instrument. That's when I saw the second thing that was wrong. The radar. My eyes in this soup was acting up. It was showing a massive return, a solid blob, maybe a mile off my port bow. A big one, Can't be, I said aloud, tapping. That's open ocean. The charts are clear. I rebooted the system. The screen went black, then flickered back to life. The blob was still there. It was huge, maybe half a mile long, low in the water. A growler? An iceberg that big this far south? It was possible, but unlikely, and it hadn't been there an hour. My curiosity, that's the thing that always gets me. The part of me that has to know. I should have turned the sea dog 180 degrees and punched a hole in the fog towards home. But I didn't. I throttled down to a slow crawl and aimed my bow right at the anomaly. If it was an uncharted rock, a pinnacle, I needed to mark it. If it was ice, I'd steer clear. But the closer I got, stranger it felt. The air changed. It got colder, sure, but it also got a smell, a thick, musky smell I'd never encountered. It smelled of ancient thing. It smelled like ozone and ammonia, something else, something rich and rotten like ambergris, a whale. Through the fog, shape began to resolve, a dark mass, just as the radar said. It was low, covered in what looked like patches of snow or ice. It looked like an island, a small, rocky island, maybe 30 feet high at its peak, sloping down into the sea. I remember thinking, a volcanic vent? Did a new island just push up? It happened. The ring of fire ain't no joke. I got closer, maybe 200 yards out, cutting the engine to a bare idle. The silence was absolute, save for the lap, lap, lap of the water against my hull. The island was dark, not black rock, but a deep brownish gray. The snow wasn't snow. It looked like barnacles the size of oiled drums encrusted over the entire surface, and the texture of the rock wasn't rock. It was wrinkled. It looked like leather, like the hide of the oldest elephant in the world. I was staring hard, my eyes watered. I saw what looked like a cave, a dark opening on the side of the island facing. It was a perfect art, dark, deep. I was about to grab my radio to call the Coast Guard and report this thing, when the water in front of me began to move. The island was shifting. It's just the swell, I told myself. But there was no swell. The island rose. It rose 10, then 20 feet higher out of the water, shedding cascades of water like 1,000 waterfalls. My little boat bobbed like a cork in the displacement. I gripped the wheel, my knuckles white. And then, from the center of that cave, something looked back at me. The cave was a fold of skin. The island wasn't an island. I was floating next to the head of something that had been sleeping. And the cave was its eyelid. I watched, frozen, as that eyelid, easily 100 feet across, pulled back. It retracted slowly, sluggishly, revealing an eye beneath, an eye the size of my entire boat. It was a milky, pale blue, shot through with veins of gold, the pupil a vast black slit, vertical, like a cat. It wasn't looking at me, it was just aware of me. It was the way you might be aware of a gnat buzzing near your ear. An annoyance, an irrelevant. The island blinked. I don't remember screaming. I don't remember thinking. My body just reacted. I slammed the throttle into full reverse, and the Sea Dog's diesel engine roared, protesting the sudden demand. The boat lurched backward, but it felt like I was stuck in mud. The island, the creature, was rising. The part I had seen was just the brow. Now the rest of it was coming up. The water around me began to churn, not from waves, but from displacement. The thing was uncurling from the deep. What I thought was a half-mile-long island was just a piece of it, maybe a knuckle, or the ridge above its eye. The eye itself, that colossal milky orb, slowly rotated in It saw me. I cannot describe the feeling of being truly seen by something like that. It wasn't malice. It was indifference. It was the indifference of the mountain to the climber, of the ocean to the sailor. I was nothing. My boat, my life, my mortgage back on shore, all of it was a meaningless dust in the gaze of this thing that was older than the ice. A sound started, not in the air, but in the water. It came through the hull, vibrating up my boots and into my... It was a groan, a low, abyssal groan of something stretching after 1,000 years. The water around me began to swirl. A whirlpool. The creature was moving. It was beginning to submerge or to die, to turn, and I was being pulled into the vacuum it left behind. Sea dog spinning. The stern was being sucked down. I was fighting the wheel, but it was useless. The engine was screaming, but the propeller was just biting froth. I looked back at that eye, and it was still on me, placid, ancient, terrible. The stench of ozone and ammonia was overwhelming. It burned my lungs. The snow-covered barnacles on its hide were grinding against each other as the skin flexed, making us like mountain. I thought, this is my end, pulled into the deep by something that doesn't even know it's killing me. I was being dragged toward what I now saw was the corner of its mouth, a vast canyon of wrinkled flesh. The water was a torrent. I was losing. I don't know why I did it. Desperation, a final, stupid act of defiance. We carry emergency signaling gear, high-intensity flares. I grabbed the flare gun, loaded a parachute flare, jammed the barrel out the wheelhouse window, and fired it right at that eye. The red magnesium streak cut the fog. It was a pathetic, tiny spark against that landscape of flesh. It hit the eyelid and bounced off, showering red sparks. The eye didn't flinch, but the creature paused. The massive groan stopped. The whirlpool faltered. The eye closed slowly with the finality of a slamming vault door. The creature began to submerge. It didn't die. It sank. The island lowered itself back into the sea. The water displacement was catastrophic. First, my boat was lifted up, up, up on the crest of a massive pressure wave until I was looking down on where the creature had been. I was surfing on the back of a god. Then, as the mass vanished, the water rushed in to fill the void. The sea dog plunged bow first into the trough. I was airborne inside the cabin, hitting the ceiling, then slamming back down onto the deck. As the boat fell, the windows shattered from the pressure. I heard the hull screaming, the wood groaning, a sound I never want to hear again. I was sure we were going to be torn apart, and then, as fast as it began, it was over. The sea dog was floating, wallowing in the choppy, confused sea. The fog was still thick. The engine had stalled. There was silence, just the sound of my own ragged breathing and the drip, drip, drip of water from the broken windows. I sat there for a long time. I don't know how long. An hour? A day? I was shaking so hard I couldn't get the key back in the ignition. Finally, I got the engine to turn over. It sputtered, coughed black smoke, and caught. The sound of my own diesel was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard. I didn't check my remaining pods. I didn't check my chart. I just turned the bow southeast toward where I prayed Dutch Harbor was, and I opened the throttle all the way. I didn't slow down until I saw the lights of the harbor. I tied up, walked off the Sea Dog without even tying the lines properly, went to the elbow room, and drank an entire bottle of whiskey. I didn't speak a word. The next day, I went to fix my windows. I told everyone I'd been hit by a rogue wave. They nodded. It happened. I never told anyone the truth. Who would believe me? They'd say I had the fever, the madness that comes from too much ice and too much solitude. They'd take my license, but I know what I say. The ocean is deep, and it holds things we have forgotten, things that were here long before us and will be here long after. We're just noise on the surface. Sometimes I still see that eye in my dreams, vast, indifferent, milky blue eye, and I remember that I am small and the world is very, very old. What I saw wasn't an island, it was truth, and some truths are better left sleeping in the deep. The main lesson of this story is that the ocean, the world itself, is far older, larger, and more mysterious than our human understanding grasps. We may think we are masters of the sea, but we are merely guests on its surface, and true wisdom lies not in conquering unknown, but in having the humility to respect the ancient secrets it keeps. Sometimes The biggest catch is the story you live to tell. If this one made your blood run a little colder, do this old fisherman a favor. Hit that like button and be sure to subscribe to the channel. You don't want to miss what else is lurking in the depths.